What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be showing y'all the process that I take to ceramic coat a vehicle. This car got everything done: paint, glass, and wheels, so it is fully protected. In this video, I'm going to be showing just about every step that I took. This car took me 40 hours to do, so I understand this video is a bit long. So without further ado, let's get started on the video. Before I could start the ceramic coating, the exterior of the car has to be washed. This is a similar process to my exterior detail, however, I do a few things differently and add a few more steps. The first thing that I do differently is I use a decontamination shampoo. This shampoo is designed to strip any residual waxes which may still be on the car's surface, which you typically wouldn't want to do, but before paint correction or a ceramic coating, this is important. I wash the car as I typically would, but when I'm finished, instead of drying the car down, I spray it down with an iron remover. This decontamination chemical dissolves any industrial fallout particles which may be embedded in the paint. So now that I've finished washing the car, it's pulled in and dried off. At this point, I pop the hood open and put the battery on a battery tender. Now the reason I do this is because I want to keep this battery topped off. I may be opening the doors and messing with the car a little bit, and I don't want to risk running the battery too low. And so this is just a step that I like to take, not totally necessary, but it's just an extra precaution that I like to take, and it's nice to deliver the car with a full battery. You're going to notice that I'm using a nice soft microfiber towel on the paint here. Now the reason I do this, and I do this whenever I'm charging any car, whether I'm detailing it or not, but the reason I do this is you can see that that cord there is hitting and touching the paint, and so this towel is going to be a barrier in between the cord and the paint in order to avoid any swirls. So now that the car is on the charger, it's time to continue our decontamination process with a clay bar. Now what this does is it removes any embedded contaminants from the clear coat of the paint that the wash and the iron remover and tar remover were not able to remove. This process is going to use friction to remove any remaining embedded contaminants. It's especially necessary on cars with a rough finish, ones that you could rub your hand over and literally hear the paint, but it's still something that I do before I polish any car. So I'm going to go around the entire car, and just about all surfaces are going to have this procedure done to them. The next step, once we finish clay barring the paint, is going to be to go around and inspect the paint. Now there are multiple things that I'm looking for, whether it's scratches or paint defects, and these are all things that I'm going to take into consideration when I'm polishing the paint. Once I finish that, it's time to tape up any surfaces that I want to protect when I'm polishing. These are edges or certain areas that I don't want any polish to get into. I tape up the vehicle a bit more than an average detailer, and the reason I do this is because I like to keep these cars protected, and I want to make sure that I don't polish or get polish into any areas that I'm not going to be able to remove it from. So you can see here this emblem is getting taped up, and the reason for this is because I don't want to have any white residue left over that I'm not able to get out. This step does take quite a bit of time, but it's one of those things that I just feel is worth it, and it's going to make the end result that much better. Now that the car is prepped, it is time to begin polishing the paint. Now as you can see here, I'm going to be applying polish onto a white foam pad. Now there are multiple pads and polishes that I would use depending upon the particular car and the condition of the paint. But on this car, this is the combination that I ended up choosing. Typically, I would start off with a test section where I try out different polishes and pads to figure out what's going to get the optimal finish and result. On this car, I'm going to be going with a one-stage polish. Now, the reason I'm able to do this is because the car doesn't have that many swirls. And the reason for that is because it's been properly washed its entire life. It's never been to a car wash. It's always been hand washed by me. So there aren't that many swirls. So before I get to polishing the paint, I want to explain why I'm doing it in the first place. As you can see, the right side is untouched and the left side is polished. The right side still has scratches and marring, which are going to affect the finish and give it a duller look, where the left side has a gloss and depth that gives the car a new finish. Depending upon how bad these swirls are is going to affect how I end up polishing the paint. The worse or deeper they are, the more likely the car is going to need a two-stage paint correction. You can see that I'm spraying the paint with an oil and polish remover. Now this isn't a totally necessary step, but it's one of the steps that I like to take before I polish the car. So I'm going to give the paint a nice clean, and once I've done this, the paint is just about stripped of any waxes, And so I can take my inspection light, turn off the overhead lights, and really get into looking at this particular panel. This is nice to do before I polish the car, just because I'm able to find any deeper scratches or things that are going to need to take a little bit more time. But because that panel looks pretty good to me, I'm just going to go ahead, get this pad prepped, put some dots of polish onto it. I'm going to go over to the paint and I'm going to start to polish in a 2x2 section. So you can see here that this process is going to be very tedious. You're going over every single surface of paint on the vehicle, and it could take quite some time. Luckily, this is just a one-stage polish because the car has been properly maintained, so it's going to be a little bit quicker than what is known as a two-stage paint correction. A two-stage paint correction is where you use a compound to begin with leveling out the paint and removing any of the deep scratches. And then you follow with what I'm doing here with a polish, which is going to jewel the paint and refine it to a perfect finish. Here we can skip the compounding step altogether, which is going to save a little bit of time. And for a customer, save them a little bit of money. And it's just not necessary to do a two-step polish on this car. On vehicles that have been to a car wash or haven't been maintained properly or are a little bit older, sometimes I'd recommend a two-stage to really remove all the deep swirls and scratches from the paint and get it an absolute ideal finish. So you can see here I wiped off the panel, it's clean, ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and inspect it one last time to make sure that I've removed any of the swirls, and at that point I can move on to the next section. After every few passes, I'm going to blow out the pad. This is important for keeping your results consistent and as close to perfect as possible, as it's going to clean the pad out. The cleaner the pad, the better finish you're going to get. So now that I've finished all the bigger panels with my bigger LHR 15, it's time to use my 3-inch LHR 75E in these smaller sections. Every now and then I'll have a client ask me if they could skip the polishing step and just go straight to the ceramic coating. And the answer to that is unfortunately always going to be no for me. And the reason for that is this polish step doesn't only remove defects, but it gets the paint cleaned properly for the coating. Another reason is I'm not going to apply a semi-permanent coating onto a car that still has defects in it. It's just not how I operate. Now, I'm sure you can find a detailer out there that's willing to apply a ceramic coating onto your car who isn't going to polish it before. However, I'd be weary of them as this is really unprofessional and not how most professional detailers operate. As you can see, for these smaller sections, I can't use my bigger machine or the 3-inch, so I have to step it down to this Rupes Nano Hybrid. Now, these machines are quite nimble, easy to use in these smaller sections, but again, it takes a lot of time. So some detailers think that they can get away with skipping this step. That's not how I operate. I got to get this car looking as perfect as I can get it. So I'm going to go in on all these smaller sections and use this nice detailed machine. Now that the car is finished being polished, it's time to unwrap the tape. So we're going to be peeling off the tape in all the sections that we taped off and giving the car a once-over. I chose to skip over the polishing process a little bit because I could make an entire video just on that and I don't want to bore you guys. So we're going to be continuing on with the video. Once all the tape has been pulled off the car, I spray the paint down with this chemical that removes any remaining polishes or fillers that the polish leaves behind. This is going to give me a true sense of the actual condition of the bare paint itself, so I can confirm that the paint is in perfect condition. At this point, if the exhaust tips need it, I'm going to give them a polish. These ones, in fact, do. The first step of this polishing procedure is going to be to spray it down with an iron remover. This is hopefully going to chew through as much of the black residue left over on the exhaust. These hydrocarbons end up staining the exhaust this black finish that normal washing is not going to be able to remove. Unfortunately, my metal polish just isn't enough to make these exhausts look as good as they should, so I'm going to have to begin with a steel wool. I don't typically like to do this as this is a pretty aggressive method, but it's what's necessary to get these exhaust tips looking as good as possible. Once I finish with the steel wool, I'm going to give the exhaust tips just a bit more shine with a metal polish. This is going to refine the exhaust tips and get them looking how I want them. And just like that, the exhaust tips look brand new again. So we're finished with the polishing process. Now we can move on to the ceramic coating. In this box, you can see the coatings that I'm typically going to use on a vehicle, and there's going to be two separate bottles. The first one here is going to be the base layer. There's going to be one coat of this typically applied on a vehicle, and the second is a top coat which offers more hydrophobicity but a little bit less durability. So these two combine to make a really strong coating that should last up to 5 years. Okay, so now it's time for the most exciting part. We're actually going to start to put the coatings on the car. So as you can see here, I have a bottle of Gtechniq Crystal Serum Light. This is my favorite ceramic coating that I use on cars. I put 2 lines or so of the product onto the applicator, and now I apply the coating to the paint. Now this is typically done in a crosshatch pattern, meaning left to right and up and down, and this is going to ensure that we have even coverage across the entire panel. Once I see that the coating has flashed, it tells me that it's time to take the coating off, so I use one towel to get the bulk of the coating removed, and then I use a second towel to clean up the paint to a perfect finish. When applying a ceramic coating, it is crucial that you're in the proper environment. Humidity, temperature, and direct sunlight are all going to affect how the coating acts, so all my coatings are applied in this climate-controlled shop. It's also crucial to make sure that you're leveling the coating properly. If you don't wipe off the coating completely once you've installed it, then you could leave what's called a high spot, which is going to require a polish and or wet sand to remove. Once Gtechniq Crystal Serum Light has been applied to the paint, I let it cure for about 12 to 24 hours, and now it's time to apply the top coat of Gtechniq EXO V4. The first layer of the coating is going to provide the durability, while this coating is going to provide the hydrophobicity that we all love in ceramic coatings. Before applying this second layer, the entire car is blown off with the air compressor and then lightly wiped down panel by panel with this ultra soft microfiber towel. As you can see, the paint is already super slick. The towel doesn't want to stick to it. This slickness is only going to increase as the coating cures. And now we're going to start the application process. This process is similar to the first layer. However, we use 3 towels when wiping the coating off because this is going to be a fair bit more difficult to remove from the paint. It's going to streak a fair bit more and it's going to be harder to wipe off, which is why we use these 3 towels. The first towel gets the bulk of the coating removed. The second towel cleans it up just a little bit, and the third towel refines it to a nice finish. Once the second layer has been applied, it's time for the third layer. So I let the second layer sit for a few hours to cure, and when I'm applying this third layer, it's going to be just about the exact same process as the second layer. In addition to the paint coating, I'm also going to be ceramic coating these wheels. Now, with these brakes, this is going to be super nice to do as it's going to make the car a lot easier to clean, and it's going to keep the wheels clean longer. The brake calipers on this car are also going to be getting coated as well, so those are going to require a deep clean, and I figured while I was cleaning those, I might as well clean the back of the wheel well, as this is too hard to clean when the wheels are still on the car. Of course, before I polish and coat these wheels, they're going to need a deep clean as well, because there's certain parts of the wheel, especially this back here, that I just can't reach that well with these big brakes on the car. So these wheels are going to be prepped just like the paint was. So you can see here I'm using the clay bar to remove any embedded contaminants, and this is going to get these wheels a lot better already. But at this point, it's time to continue washing them, giving them a true deep clean, as it's a lot easier to clean the wheels when they are off the car. The same process done on the barrel of the wheel is also going to be done on the face of the wheel, and as you can see, this is quite a tedious process. Now it is time to apply the ceramic coating to these brake calipers. You're going to notice that the rotors seem very rusted, and this is pretty typical when you're washing them and using the chemicals that I use. After a few minutes of driving, all this rust on the rotor is going to be gone, and it's going to look as good as new. Once the brake calipers have been coated, I'm going to polish the wheels and get them looking as good as possible. And as you can see, I'm using my Rupes Nano Hybrid. Once I'm finished with that, the wheels get prepped just as the paint did. And then they're going to be ceramic coated in a similar manner as I did the paint. Now this coating that I use on the wheels is a high temperature coating because it has to stand up to the heat that the brakes and wheels are going to encounter when driving. And so this coating doesn't last quite as long as a typical paint ceramic coating. Expect 1 to 2 years of protection with this. Of course, I'm not just going to stop at coating the wheel faces. The barrels of the wheel and back of the wheel spokes are also going to get a coating applied to them as well. This ceramic wheel coating is going to make these wheels stay cleaner longer, and it's going to make them a whole lot easier to clean whenever I wash the vehicle. To finish it off, both the front and back of the tire are going to get coated with this ultra hydrophobic coating, which will make the tires easier to clean and give them a nice brand new look. The wheel coating doesn't stop there. I also deep clean the lug nuts. Once they're finished being deep cleaned, they get prepped just as the wheels and paint were, and ceramic coated as well. Before the wheels go back on, I apply a second layer of the high temperature ceramic coating onto the brake calipers, and then they're ready to go. Here's the finished result on the wheel wells and brake calipers. They look a whole lot better. Now that the paint and wheels are complete, I apply a glass sealant to all the glass surfaces around the car and let it sit for 15 minutes. Once it's cured, I can remove it and buff the windows to a perfect shine. And after about 40 hours of work, this car is finished. As you can see, it has a gloss and depth that just can't be matched by a wax or paint sealant. And unlike a wax or paint sealant, this coating is going to last up to 5 years. On that note, I want to go over why somebody would choose to ceramic coat their vehicle. Starting off with the first and probably most popular reason for getting your vehicle ceramic coated, and that's the hydrophobic properties that a coating offers. Now, there are multiple reasons why this is a good thing. The first of which is the self-cleaning properties that these coatings offer. Now, this doesn't mean that you're never going to have to wash your car, but it does mean that it's going to stay cleaner longer. Where a wax may create a static charge which will draw dust towards the vehicle, this coating repels dust and keeps your vehicle cleaner. The next pro to a ceramic coating is its chemical resistance. Now, you may be wondering why your paint needs to be resistant to chemicals. Well, the reason for that is mud, acid rain, bird droppings, bugs, and tree sap are all fairly acidic and can end up staining your paint, even if it's only left on for a few minutes. So this coating is going to make those easier to clean off, and it's also not going to stain like a car protected with wax may. The coating's resistance from pH 2 to pH 12 is going to keep this car looking new for a lot longer than a wax would. Another benefit to a ceramic coating is its scratch resistance. Now, this doesn't mean that your vehicle is now going to be scratch proof. You could still take a screwdriver to it or take it to the car wash and end up with scratches in the paint. However, if it's washed properly, you're going to end up with far less swirls, as this paint is now 9H scratch resistant. This paint is now significantly harder, meaning it's going to be more resistant to swirls. However, it's not scratch proof, so it's important to still practice safe washing methods with the paint. And finally, my favorite property of a ceramic coating is its ease of cleaning. So I mentioned earlier that these coatings are extremely hydrophobic, meaning water doesn't like to stick to the surface. They have a very high surface tension. And this same idea is true for anything else that would get your car dirty. Dirt, tree sap, tar, bugs, any of that is easy to clean off the surface. All you have to do is run the mitt over it, and there's no rubbing or scraping necessary, which is gonna, again, decrease the likelihood of any swirls in the paint. These hydrophobic properties will make your car easier to dry off with an air compressor or other form of forced air instead of using a towel, which will further decrease the likelihood of swirls. In summary, a ceramic coating is one of the best options for keeping your car's paint protected from the elements. Like anything, it has its drawbacks. Your car is more likely to get water spots, which can easily be removed with a special chemical. However, it's still something to consider. Nothing's perfect, ceramic coatings aren't perfect, but in my opinion, the benefits far outweigh the negatives. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or leave them in the comments down below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching.